I want to welcome everybody to our Learn at Lunch today. We're really excited to be offering, this is going to be our 10th Learn at Lunch this year, which is really great. And all of those, if you've missed them prior to this one you've joined us for, you can find those on our website and on our YouTube channel at kymuseums.org. So please check those out. Lots of really fascinating presentations that we've had so far in 2026, including this incredible presentation. I'm so excited to be welcoming our friends Melissa and Sarah from the Hindman Settlement School. They have just an absolutely remarkable story to tell you here today about resilience and about preserving history there in Eastern Kentucky after some pretty insane natural disasters that they've had to contend with. So I'm sure we're all ready to hear from Sarah and Melissa. So I'm going to turn it over to them. If you do have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat as they're presenting, or we'll have some time at the end of the presentation when you can ask questions to them directly. So I'll hand this over to Sarah and Melissa. Thank you.
So, hello, my name is Sarah Insalaco. I'm the archivist here at Hindman Settlement School. So the way that we have the presentation laid out is that we're just going to cover a little bit about the history of the school and what it has evolved to in the last almost 125 years. And then Melissa is going to go into the flood recovery, and then we'll all wrap up the next steps of recovery after that. So I'm going to share my screen if that's okay. All right. Can everyone see? Cool. Awesome. All right. So just a little bit about Hindman Settlement School. All right. So we're going to go to about 1900, late 1890s, early 1900s, and here in Appalachia, or in Eastern Kentucky. Our communities here were very much isolated, rural, not access to a lot of the resources that Central and Western Kentucky had to offer. But also at this time, there were great strives to make education more available, not just to people in cities, but people in rural communities. There was also, prior to this, some clubs out in middle and central and western Kentucky that also heard about this, and they kind of had a fascination of the people of Eastern Kentucky, and so we're going to talk about them next. All right. So the woman in the middle of the screen, that is the middle photo, that is Catherine Pettit. She, born and raised outside of Lexington, Kentucky, educated, came from a well-to-do family, but she always had a fascination of the people of the mountains. They were just mysterious to her, and it carried all through central and western Kentucky, that people had a fascination, but she really kind of had not a want to like come and rescue, but like a help in a way that they could still be self-sufficient. So around 1895, she came to Hazard in Perry County for a vacation. And I know nothing screams vacation like Hazard, Kentucky, but she was very much fascinated by everything that Perry County and Hazard had to offer. But she did see the need to help in a lot of various ways through whether it be sewing, cooking, first aid, childcare, things like that. So she asked this woman who is on the left of the screen, May Stone. They were both part of the Federation of Women's Clubs as well as the Women's Christian Temperance Union. And so they came out here again in about 1899 and set up a camp in Hazard, Kentucky called Camp Industrial. At that said camp, she put in, they did first aid, cooking, writing, and there was also a traveling library as well. Now, the man on the right, his name is Solomon Everidge. We call him Uncle Saul here on campus. He heard about these women that were teaching the people of Perry County. And so he allegedly walked the 22 miles down to Hazard barefoot and asked these women to start a school for his greats and grands, because this was very important to him, for his family to actually have an education. Solomon Everett did not have an education of any level. He was illiterate and he just never got to attend school. So that was very important to him. So the women made a deal saying, we'll come next summer and we'll set up a camp. So they did in Sassafras. It was very successful. They saw a need to do it one more year. And then at the end of 1901, they were like, oh, we need a full-time school here. And thus Hindman Settlement School was born. First, it was called the WCTU School, the Women's Christian Temperance Union School, because they footed the bill for the mortgage. So they got the naming rights to it. So, and then this is the traveling library from Camp Industrial. All right. So one thing that the settlements has always done that they still continue to do was the outreach and community, and even health initiatives, such as bringing in teachers from all over, particularly in the Northeast. Both Maystone went to Wellesley College, and so she set up a trade program where teachers, recent graduates, would come down here from places like Wellesley and Smith and a couple of other schools up there. So that was it. We also had agricultural extension. We had a fully functioning farm. We were self-sustaining. We processed our own meat, raised our own, or grew our own produce. We had our own dairy. So we were all very, very self-sufficient. And we did all of this while still helping the community. If you have ever been to campus, you know that there is the Stuckey building. This is Joseph Addison Stuckey. He was a prominent doctor born in Louisville, but lived in Lexington. He came out here with the help of his wife. His wife was part of the WCTU, so he came out here and helped set up the hospital. There were two ailments at the time that plagued the community. One was pinworms, which is still very common in pediatrics. And then two, there was trachoma, which is an infection of the eye. And if left untreated, it can cause permanent damage and blindness. So he and another doctor here on campus named Dr. Duke protocoled the cure, or the treatment protocol for trachoma, which is still in use today. And that was here in Hindman. So it's still, we don't so much do health initiatives anymore, such as like what Stuckey did, but it was born here and it continued. And we worked like in Leslie County and things like that with the midwives and everything. Okay. So we're going to go a little bit into the future. So we stopped being a full-time school when the county took over all the schooling. So if you, so we had Hindman High School, Carr Creek High School, things like that. Those all condensed into Knott Central and Cordia. So not needing the time for a full-time school, it slowly evolved to where we now have 4 programs. So we have the literary arts program, the traditional arts, and foodways, which we'll get to a little bit of them now. And Melissa can definitely tell you a lot more about the literary arts than I ever could. So Melissa, did you want to do a little bit about your program?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Melissa Helton, the literary arts director here. I've been here since 6 months before the flood in 22. And the literary arts is kind of wide reaching. Next year is the 50th anniversary for our Appalachian Writers Workshop, which over the years has helped shape the careers and artistic expression of thousands of writers throughout the region. We also have a youth version of the Writers Workshop, which is the Ironwood Writer Studio, where teenagers come and stay a week on campus. We also do weekend retreats in the spring and the fall. We have a literary publication, a print color journal called Untelling, which is for visual art and photography and writing. We also have online makery classes. We participate in a national challenge to write a poem a day. Lots of stuff happening virtually, asynchronously, and on campus.
So our traditional arts is led by the legendary one and only Sarah Kate Morgan, who is an absolute gem. If anybody, a gem of a human, if anybody has ever met her. She has so much pride when it comes to traditional arts that she has grown our pick and bow program to where there, which is a free music lesson in the schools. Then like children or the kids can pick anywhere between a dulcimer, a guitar, a fiddle, and a mandolin, and they give free music lessons out, and it has grown so much, and it's because of her diligent dedication to it. She also does she also brings in art residences of artists. So you have this middle photo as a student making during a basket residency, and then she's also in charge of our monthly square dances, which will start in August, I believe, if I remember the calendar. Next, we have Foodways, which is led by Rebecca Fugit, and also the an AmeriCorps member named Andy. They work in the schools with bringing in nutrition and using local produce to make good and sustainable meals. They also teach gardening, how to plant their own food in the schools, as well as here on campus. And Rebecca is in charge of several different events on campus, such as Dumplings and Dancing, Larder and Lore. And then anytime that one of our programs wants to do something in Foodways, they are our go-to people. They are also in charge of the Farmers Market, which runs from the beginning of June to the middle of October every year, on Tuesdays and Fridays. So we're very, very proud of that program. And then our last one is dyslexia, born out of the idea of one of our longtime board members. There was a huge need for reading support and now math support that we have here in the county. And so we do an intensive, like right now we have summer school going on. So there's a 5-week-long summer school intensive. That is very, very successful. Students gain months, if not a couple years, in reading and getting to their grade level. And that's also an AmeriCorps program. So AmeriCorps members are over there working with students every day. And we serve not Breathitt, Perry, and a couple of other counties in this program as well. So while we're no longer a full-time school, we're still helping the community in many ways. All right, Melissa.
Yeah, so thank you guys for having us here. I see some familiar faces out there. I see Jim and Elaine, hi, and Lisa. Lisa was very active in our rescue and recovery. So July 28th, 2022, we were in the middle of our Appalachian Writers Workshop. We had about 65 people on campus staying that night, and it was after our trivia tournament. And I had my 16-year-old child with me, and so I went home to Leslie County and woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, just kind of unexpectedly, and saw my phone blowing up. And I did not know that my friends and colleagues and teachers and friends were all in critical danger here on campus. I'm going to drop in the chat NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, if I got that right, they have a page specifically about this flooding if you're interested in more of the statistics. But it was classified as a 1,000-year flood due to the rainfall over a certain period of time. And Troublesome Creek, we're at the headwaters of Troublesome Creek, and it's today, I mean, what is it, 4 inches deep? Even with all the rain we've had, it's really, really shallow. And during the early morning hours, it rose to over 20 feet. 20 feet of water just tearing through here. And we're right next to a large field. So if we had been even more condensed and hadn't had that field to hold so much water, it would have been even worse. So the water came in, obviously did a lot of damage in our archives, but damaged 5 different buildings, including classrooms, apartments, hoop houses, storage, our offices. We all had like 54 inches of water in our offices, chest high. And so when the water went down and the sun came up and our writers were able to evacuate, Our executive director, Will Anderson, put out a call on social media and he said, we don't have water, we don't have electric, we can't change the sheets because every bed on campus was being slept in for workshop. But any community members who need a place to go, come here. And we housed community members for months while they were waiting for transitional housing or their FEMA trailers. And so while we were doing caring for the community in that way, the settlement school became a huge donation center where, 20, 30, 40 boxes were delivered off of UPS. A literal school bus showed up, countless people donating money, donating cleaning supplies, food, dog food, tampons, anything that people might need while their homes were destroyed. And 45 people died in that flood. 22 were in Knott County. And one family lost all four of their children. So even if people didn't lose a person, it's such a close-knit community. Everybody knows somebody who's grieving in some way. Your church was destroyed, or your school was destroyed, or your mama's house was literally picked up and carried downstream and crashed into a bridge. So we were doing those things. We also became a center for FEMA was here, things like University of Kentucky coming down and doing vaccination clinics. And at the same time, because of our dyslexia program offering tutoring in counties that weren't flooded, part of that program was business as usual. So then we were doing AmeriCorps training and trying to do normal operations. And while all that was going on, one of my priorities was the archive rescue. Now, I'm not an archivist, a historian, a conservator, a librarian. Nobody on campus was qualified to do what needed to be done. And that Saturday, our director, Will, said, Melissa, can you see what you can do with the archive? And so I immediately called a woman I went to high school with who had been a book conservator at the National Archives in DC. And I said, oh my God, Shannon, what do I do? And she gave me some immediate strategy: get the dry things out before they mildew, try to prioritize what can be dried. We need to get freezers to freeze the things, like paper things, to stop the mold growth or to pause it. And one of the problems is that we didn't have an archivist on campus, and so nobody knew what to prioritize. So I could tell handwritten journal pages from 1899, those are old, those are important. Let's save those first. But there's a box with an accordion in it. Is this just something somebody has put in here? Was it donated and not that important? Is this a really important accordion? I have no idea. So we had paper things like books and letters and correspondence. We also had photographs. We had all sorts of slides, videotapes, but we also had a lot of material things like fabrics and musical instruments. And so another problem is that when volunteers would show up, there wasn't one person who could be an expert in all of that. So Lydia Kitts came down and she's a fabric conservator, and so she helped with those kinds of things. But if she was the expert on the ground at that time, she also had to make decisions that were outside of her area of expertise. So one of the problems that we had was that it was a really great archive. It was temperature controlled. We had fire safe drawers. The problem with fire safe drawers is if your problem is water, they hold water and take a long time to drain. So by the time the next day we got in there, everything was so waterlogged that we couldn't get the folders out of the drawers without risking to tear them. So then you have to wait for them to drain. Meanwhile, everybody's saying, you have 72 hours. It's July. The mold is coming. The flies are coming. So I'm really proud of the work that all of our volunteers did. I'm deeply indebted to too many people that I could even name in this presentation. Some of the first people on the ground were actually people who were also trying to get to Appalshop in Whitesburg, Letcher County, because their archive, which was even more extensive, especially in film media, they had 6 feet of water, and they literally could not get to Appalshop. And so some of the first people on the ground helping me here were people destined, their destination was Whitesburg. So we strung up, I had some twine left over from a craft project, and we strung up twine tied to the back of rocking chairs got some clothespins and paper clips to hang stuff up to dry. A couple days later, we managed to get 5 deep freezers, which Sarah just got emptied, the last one, like just a couple weeks ago, 4 years later. And the things that people told me could be frozen, I put in there. We couldn't put things like cassette tapes and, magnetic things that the freezing would ruin the quality. Um, and then we had people laying things out to dry, washing off what could be washed off. And some of the problems in this was that when identifiers got separated from the the piece, and being able to assess what was actually lost. So we tried our best to save as many books as we could, but eventually, on the day where I asked Lori Meyer Steele, or Lori Steers Meyer, is it Meyer Steele? The amazing archivist from Berea. Lori came in, and it was finally one of those times where I was like, you need to call it. You're the expert on the ground. Go look to see if there's anything else we can salvage. And she said, no, this is it. And so we went in with shovels to shovel books. And it was a hard day for all of us, and especially as a book lover. Um, so that's kind of like the crash course as to what happened. I do want to offer one more thing if you guys are interested in learning more about any of the flood itself before Sarah starts talking about the longer term recovery. Um, the day after the flood, we got on Zoom, me and my writers. We were just checking, has anybody heard if Georgella Line made it home? And oh, I saw her at a red light in London. Or trying to, because about 12 of our writers lost their cars. So just checking in that everybody got home. We were joking that, we had um, all these Appalachian writers go through a flood. When is the book going to come out? Well, I want to put this link here. We did a anthology called Troublesome Rising, A Thousand Year Flood in Eastern Kentucky, that talks about the flood itself. And also, if you click through there, there's a digital anthology where every year we contribute more pieces to the discussion on that. So if you want to learn more about that.
Awesome. Okay. So we are the archive that I work, the Hindman Settlement School archive is called the Louisa St. Clair Archive. But when I first started here, I was even though I worked in archives for 10 years, fresh out of grad school at this point. I knew I was getting into something big. I just didn't know about how much of the magnitude that this place would have on my life. But the first thing I did was, just when I came in on campus, was I started writing archive policies, because while we had a physical archive, we did not have anything from like copyright or like permission to publish or a scope or emergency plan or anything like that. So that was the first thing that I did, like the first couple months that I was here, was writing those policies. And then I started tackling the 5 deep freezers that we had. Also, Jeremy Smith at the East Tennessee's Archive of the Appalachia, he and a group and a team came and grabbed a lot of our collection and cleaned and preserved that for us. So I had to run it. I had to go and get that shortly after I arrived here. And then we also, Melissa and I, had to go to Lexington because a food supply company there a couple days after the flood took a donation of food out, and then they were talking about the archive, and they said, hey, we'll take your stuff, and we put it in boxes, and they took it to them, and it was in there for what, Melissa, a year? They just stored it for a year. So we were very, very grateful for that. So came by, and a recovery process like this just does not have a starting point. You just jump in and you just start grabbing materials. So I'd get a couple of materials out of the freezer and let them thaw for a little bit, so I could at least separate the pages without the risk of tearing. So then I would lay them out all on, I had like long tables and plastic sheeting all over it. And so I would take one material at a time. If something was in an envelope, take it out of an envelope, place it down, and just watch it, literally watching it dry to make sure mold didn't show back up, or if it did, how to do a treatment on it. The same thing with the books and photographs. It amazes me how many people keep, how many scrapbooks that we had in our collection that we had to literally tear apart. Elizabeth Watts, who was here, who worked or served the school at some capacity for over 70 years, had a bunch of scrapbooks. And I remember one scrapbook that she had, it was a traveling one. She did a road trip of England, and in it was like the map that she used as like her road map, and she had highlighted the route that she took, and she all of her postcards and stuff. To take that apart was really, really sad, but it smelled really, really bad, and it was moldy, so it was just what had to be done. So we saved what we could. A lot of her writing, though, was lost from that, and I really wish it was still, we could have saved it, because it was also a month right before World War II started. So I wanted to see if there was like anything in it that was precursing to war and stuff, but that we'll never know. But so taking it all out, putting them down, and then making sure that the humidity is right in the lab, which was right next to Troublesome Creek. So that was very hard to keep everything stable, but slowly but surely we got through it all. These are some pictures of the flood recovery. This is the stuff that was being taken to the food company that had the huge walk-in industrial freezers. This was the storage room. So if you can picture this, right in front of this room was where the archive was. And then this was the wonderful job that Melissa and the volunteers did of cleaning and helping preserve. So with the archive, now that everything has been cleaned and everything is organized into a collection, the next thing is digitization. And so we are in the process of getting the ball rolling on that. The end goal is to have every important thing digitized for public access. And that is easier said than done. But that is what we would like to. We have so much cool stuff in the archive, and we're so far out that making this accessible to all the people who want to utilize our collection, it hopefully will be available. But we also want to grow visibility, not just for the archive, but for literary arts, and traditional arts and foodways, and saying that we are still here and we are still wanting to build this community. And a lot of that has changed since the flood. And so even though it'll be 4 years at the end of the month, we're still trying to get back on our feet, as a lot of people still are. But one of the things about this community is that we're resilient, and yeah, we've been knocked down a couple times, but we get back up and we persevere. And I think that's not just Hindman, that's all of Appalachia. So I'm very grateful to be a part of this, and I'm very grateful that even though flood recovery is never done, a good portion of the cleaning is done, and how much we were able to save was absolutely amazing. I can only think about like maybe a couple of garbage bags that I had to call something on. And yeah, that was probably one of the emotional tolls that the archive recovery kind of took on me. It's particularly with photos, because a lot of the children here did not have access to cameras. So someone who took their photo, that might have been the only photo that they had of them. And so if I had to throw that photo away, it's like I'm throwing away the identity of this person. So that was like the emotional toll was pretty hard. Another challenge that I had was how much stuff we had and how much lack of space I had at the time. But those were like, the space challenge was far less than the emotional toll that it took. But Melissa, do you have anything, last remarks?
Yeah, I would like to say that whether we're looking at a regional archive or whether we're looking at a region's literature and its art and its foodways, I think one of the important things about um, the endeavors that we do here at the settlement school is preserving the information of the past, certainly, but particularly in archives and literature, it is a way for people to tell their own story. We all know as scholars and people associated with Appalachia how damaging and misleading it can be when outsiders come here and then they go out and they say, "Oh, this is what life is like in Appalachia," or "This is what life is like as fill in the blank," right? It's very important that people get to tell their own stories about their own experiences and their own worldview. And as the literary arts director, that's one of my guiding missions in all of our programming here. And especially when I look at what I've seen Sarah do and the importance of our archive and like the archive at Apple Shop is that this is a way for people of the past and of modern era to tell Appalachia's story in their own words. And especially when you have, you know, even to this day, you have people that are speaking on behalf of Appalachia who don't really have the authority, the expertise, or the understanding of nuance to do that. And I think that archives like this, literature like this, can help set the record straight, give communities room to use their voices to tell the truth and to fight back on negative stereotypes or historic misunderstandings or current misunderstandings. And that's why I think these small archives, to people who don't get it, it can seem like, well, why do you bother? You know, okay, you get 10 scholars a year who come in here and do this. But to preserve these artifacts and this collection of Appalachians telling their own story is tremendously important. And that's why this flood was particularly devastating to people who care about history in Appalachia because it was our archive and it was Apple Shop. And you can find a lot that's been written and spoken about Apple Shop's importance. And that's why the work that Sarah has done to rescue and save what can be, but then also looking at, okay, how do we make this accessible to other people? And then also, what do we need to put in this archive now that we have a full-time archivist to do this work? What do we need to add into this to flesh out the story? Because there's a lot of stories that aren't being told even in our archive. And so this is an ongoing thing that, yes, we're talking about the past, but we're refining our current modern understanding of it. And I think that that's why this is so important. And I'm so thankful that Sarah has come down and worked, and she's got long ties to this region. And it's really great to have somebody from this region doing this work because it's really important to get it right.
We do have a question if you guys are ready to field a question. Alyssa's asking, do you have a plan yet for how you will make the digitized material accessible online to the public? So any ideas on what kind of software or systems or methods you're going to use?
Yeah, I would really like to use Past Perfect just because it's very user friendly. Anybody can access it, and also with that particular database, you can put web accessibility on that. So my goal is to have either have an extension on the website, a link to it, or have the archive have its own website and where people can access that as well. Like I said, it's easier said than done. Anybody who knows have been in the digitization world that it takes a lot of time to digitize. It's like, yeah, you scan, but then you also have to put in the identifiers and the control vocabularies and everything. So it takes a minute for all of it to come together. But once it does, it's very nice and it's very beneficial, but also time is a precious resource. And so I'm hoping that with the help of volunteers and stuff, we can scan it and get it up as running as quickly as possible.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm the digital archivist at the Kentucky Historical Society. So every time I hear of a new archive kind of doing digital things, I'm always interested. I'm also on the Kentucky Digital Library work group. So we host kind of a free instance of content DM for folks who are looking into doing kind of digital archives online. But we use Past Perfect at KHS and we love it. We use it for our object collection and then our kind of collections management records. So our staff has a lot of experience too. But if you guys ever want any other like digitization resources or anything like that, I'd be happy to kind of pass on what I've got. But that sounds like a great plan, and I'm glad to hear that you all are doing this work to make it accessible.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Another couple of projects that I've started along with with Melissa's help. Next year is our 50th of the Appalachian Writers Workshop. So it's a big deal, 50 years. So we've decided that we've done an oral history project with them. And so we're in the process of that being uploaded and digitized on just a hard drive right now. But the goal is to get all of that digitized. And then about 30 years ago, somebody did an oral history project with alum from like the 19 teens, 20s, and 30s. So the goal is to have that. Miraculously, all the tapes are fine, all the transcripts are fine. So to digitize that, and then I will take on to see if anybody from the 40s, 50s, and 60s would like to do an oral history, just so we have multi-generational takes on life here in Knott County and during those time periods, especially from the point of view from a teenager. So that's the ongoing projects that I would like to begin. Yeah.
I was excited to hear that you're still actively collecting to, look now that you have an understanding of everything that you have, now you can see the holes of what you want. Do you have a couple like collecting goals that you could share with us of like areas where you're looking to grow?
Yeah, I really, really like the just everything, like anything that pertains to Knott County would be great. There was a very good basketball player here, they were siblings named Jennings and Garter Martin, and they donated every bit of sports memorabilia that they had from Hindman High School. So we have like their lettermans, their team photos, and things like that. I would really like to expand the basketball legacy of Knott County because it's pretty big. And Hindman Settlement School had like one of the first basketball games to come here, either in the region or the state. I'm not sure which one, but it happened here at Hindman Settlement School. So to have that and all the sports stuff and how important it is, that would be really fun to grow. Also, we are consistently getting dulcimers, like antique dulcimers in, so instruments. But I would really like to see more Knott County stuff come in as well. So like yearbooks, textiles like lettermans, flags, things like that, because we've opened up the scope a little bit to the archive. When I first came here, it was anything that pertains to Hindman Settlement School, and now it's anything that pertains to Hindman Settlement School or Knott County, whether it be schools or local history, photos, things like that. So always willing to take into our collection something that pertains, that's very special to the county.
I would like to offer one other thing that Sarah is doing that I think is being really great in drumming up not only public education, but interest in the archive is something simple like on the settlement school's social media, she's doing flashback Fridays. And so she'll take a photograph or something from the collection and post it and then give information and tell the story or who was this person and does that research to kind of flesh out the story behind the object. And if you look at the responses that people have to those posts, they're like, that's my great Aunt Ethel, or I heard stories about, whatever. And it's a way to to actively engage people living and scrolling on social media to this deep history of this place. And I think that that's such a good strategy for education and engagement.
Yeah. Yeah. And like one of my favorite things is while we're here is connecting people from the present to the past, because we're all it's connected regardless of how you see it. And when I first got here, I knew I wanted to implement a flashback Friday because, like I said, it gets community involved and stuff like that. And a lot of these photos did not have identifiers on them. So I managed to find one that had a photo, and it was a photo. I call her Trudy Franklin because like that her name was Gertrude. I don't like that name, so I call her Trudy. And she was used on a lot of like promotional materials for the school, like newsletters, brochures, things like that. It was always her. So I was like, who is she? Like, let's go to Ancestry and find out who she is. So I went onto Ancestry and I found out that her father passed away when she was young. She was one of 4 siblings, and her mom couldn't take care of them, so she sent them to the settlement school where they could get a better life. And then her mom passed away during the flu epidemic of 1918, 1919, so they were orphaned. Now, Hindman Settlement School was not an orphanage. It was not designated to be one. And so if you were orphaned, you could not stay on campus unless you had a guardian, a legal guardian. No one could step in for the Franklin children. And so they all were put into foster care, but they were split up. And I did not know this until I got onto Ancestry and I found Gertrude's daughter-in-law, like had an account and everything. And so I sent her a message, never thinking I'd get a response back or anything. And like 10 minutes later, I got an email from her saying, what do you have? And like, she goes into all this detail about like them and like what happened in her life and everything. And she's like, and I hate to ask this, but if you find any pictures of them together as kids, can we please have copies? Because they never saw pictures of the children together until their adulthood. And when I was like going through some other boxes, I found scrapbook pages, and they were just pages of the siblings together. And I like just did like the happiest dance, like the happiest dance I've ever done in my life. And like, I just scanned them immediately. I was like, here you go. Here's the connection and everything. And so it's like, that just like gets like, that's like why I do it. It's like, it's because to make the connection from the past to the present and to give people answers, because that family didn't have answers for years and years and years, and now they do. And so I was so happy to do that for them, and I still do that. Like, I love it when I get research requests like, oh, my great grandfather went here, do you have anything on him or anything like that? And so like, and like just today we had an alum's great granddaughter come in. Her great grandmother graduated here from 1911, and they were very interested in everything. So there's still a need, and people are still showing up. Like tomorrow, I have another alum family showing up to do a tour and everything. So the visibility that we're getting because of the archive and because of the work that Melissa and we all are doing is everything I've hoped for and more. So I'm very proud of the work that's being done here. Everybody, because we all have to work together to make this place run.
Leah Hamilton has dropped something in the chat. She says, you both have always been so willing to tell your stories of archival recovery from the 22 floods, and it's very appreciated as it has helped others, including me and my students at UK, learn from your tremendous and thoughtful efforts. Thank you. She also has a question and says, can you tell us more about the workshops you've hosted, the videos you've made to help other regional groups learn how to house and maintain their own archives?
Yeah. So back in 2025, Eastern Kentucky was hit with another flood. We got flooded, but it wasn't as bad as what Pike County and Harlan County got hit with. And so our traditional arts director was out in Pikeville helping cleaning up houses and stuff like that. And someone brought her a box of photos that was in the flood. And she calls me and she's like, can I bring these to you and can you clean them? And I'm still in the middle of my flood recovery. And so I was like, you know what? We're going to do a video about how to clean photos. And so that is what we did. It went on TikTok. It went on our Facebook page. And I do have to say, I think it is the most viewed video on our TikTok. Like, I think it was like over 75,000 the last time I saw it. So that was just a way, it's just a way that we can help the community without them having to bring their stuff to us. So that's one way that we do it. Other types of workshops, we would do volunteer weekends, and those were tremendously helpful when, especially there were weeks that I was like drowning in materials. It's like, I don't know, because they're not doing any anything. Like if we had like a week of rain, the materials would still be wet. And so doing things like that and bringing in more people and having a little bit more space, that helped out a lot as well.
And Jim Seaver has a question here. He says, beyond projects like the Troublesome Rising anthology, what other plans, perhaps tentative, do you all have to commemorate this event in some way?
Well, we still have the high water mark marked on one of our buildings. And we definitely want to install a marker or a sign to designate that water height. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers did put a high water mark on our campus. And so we definitely want to do that. The problem is always funding, especially when you're doing all these repairs, just having a 125-year-old campus, but then also flood recovery. I do want to mention Rebecca Ratke at the University of Kentucky. Just came in the mail yesterday. She had her design students, read The Troublesome Rising, and then they each took a quote from one of the pieces and embroidered it. And then we had a volunteer group in Florida quilt them together. So it's this beautiful quilt with all these UK students' quotes from the anthology, and we're gonna have this hanging up in the Great Hall. And I think something like this, as a living, current, modern piece of art and response, which involved dozens of people, I think this will be a beautiful memorial to have up there. And next year is the 5th anniversary. It's a big year next year. 125 for the settlement school, 50 for writers workshop, and 5th for the flood. And so I think we might have some kind of event happening next year. I'm not exactly sure what that is yet.
I'm going to open this up to any other questions from the gallery here. Any other questions for our wonderful presenters? Okay, well, this has been so fascinating. Thank you both for your time. Thank you for this incredible work that you do for your community, but also to inspire all of us to also help our community and to learn from you. We're really pleased you were able to be here with us. This presentation, if you want to come back to it, you want to hear it again, you want to hear the answers, great answers to the questions. Again, this will be available on our website at kymuseums.org and on our YouTube channel. And I just want to thank everybody for spending your lunch hour with all of us today and taking some time to learn about the amazing work at
Thank you so much for having us.
It's our pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.